The image of the Viking Age is often painted in violent strokes, dragon-headed ships crashing through waves, axes raised against a stormy sky. But the true history of this life was not a painting. It was a physical discipline defined by the persistent damp cold in the bones, the sharp, medicinal scent of pine tar on the hands, and the low, grinding sound of stones shifting underfoot with every heavy step. Welcome to the canvas, traveler. Tonight, we step past the spectacle of history to find the human texture within it. This is a descent into the quiet moments that built an era, a journey into the physical reality of a master artisan. Here you will not just observe the work of the boat builder. You will feel the unyielding resistance of the oak and the deep, penetrating chill of the fjord. But before the journey continues, a brief pause belongs to the present moment, where simple gestures of support quietly sustain this space and leave small traces of connection across distance and time. These traces linger as attention begins to loosen its hold on the modern world. Screens, clocks, and obligations soften at the edges, their presence slowly fading into the margins of the night. The hard lines of the room begin to recede. The walls become transparent, replaced by a vast, rolling mist. The manufactured silence of the present gives way to an older quiet, layered with the distant murmur of water. A change is felt in the air, a drop in temperature that carries the scent of salt and wet wood. The year is 874, and the story begins on a stony beach, under a sky of heavy, uniform cloud. The transition from night to morning is marked only by a subtle shift in the gray overhead. There is no direct sun, just a diffusing brightness revealing the damp atmosphere. A penetrating chill presses against the skin, a constant physical weight. The air carries the sharp, clean scent of wet pine and deep water. Far off, the rhythmic lapping of the tide provides a steady, low pulse. The world consists solely of granite, timber, and the sea. A breath is taken, and the air that enters the lungs is sharp and cold, a shock to the system. It exits as a cloud of white vapor, briefly visible before dissolving into the mist. The ground is a field of smooth, gray stones, worn down by endless tides. Each step causes a low grinding sound as the stones shift against one another, a sound that is absorbed by the dense, quiet air. The smell of pine tar hangs heavy here. It is a sharp medicinal scent that clings to the wool tunic and the timber of the great frame nearby. Mixed with it is the deeper, darker smell of the sea itself, of salt and cold depth, and the faint trace of decaying seaweed left by the last high tide. These are the smells of work, the permanent atmosphere of this place between the forest and the water. You feel the slight dampness of the air beginning to soak into the fibers of the clothing. The heavy wool of the tunic grows heavier, and the leather boots feel stiff with the cold. The body adjusts, pulling inward, conserving its warmth against the persistent chill. Movement is deliberate, a way to generate heat against the slow, creeping cold that radiates from the damp ground and the endless gray sky overhead. The great wooden skeleton of the ship dominates the beach. Its long, curved spine, the keel, rests on heavy blocks of timber. From this central beam, unfinished ribs curve upward, stark and pale against the muted background. The structure seems to be a part of the landscape, like the bones of some immense creature that has come to rest on the shore. Its silence is one of waiting, of work yet to be done. The sound of the fjord is a constant, low murmur. The water is dark and impossibly deep, its surface like polished gray stone. There are no crashing waves here, only the slow, heavy rise and fall of the tide. It is a powerful, patient sound that speaks of immense weight and pressure. You notice the way the sound seems to fill the space, a bass note for the entire world. A light wind drifts down from the high cliffs that line the water. It carries no warmth, only the scent of damp earth and pine needles from the forest above. It moves through the timbers of the ship's frame, creating a low, hollow hum, almost a vibration. The air is never truly still here. It is always moving, carrying the chill of the sea and the scent of the trees. The hands are bare and the skin on the knuckles is rough and chapped from work and cold. When a hand is placed on the unfinished hull of the ship, the wood is cold to the touch, almost like stone. It is a solid, unyielding cold that seems to draw the warmth right out of the fingers. The texture of the raw, axe-hewn plank is a rough map of grooves and ridges. Looking down the length of the beach, the world dissolves into gray mist. The line where the water meets the sky is gone, blurred into a single, seamless curtain of vapor. The world feels small and enclosed, a circle of stone and wood floating in a silent, colorless void. The only anchor is the immense weight of the half-finished ship, holding its ground against the quiet and the cold. You feel a deep stillness settle into the bones. It is the quiet of intense focus, the state required for the work ahead. The external world, the cold, the damp, the endless gray fades to a distant hum. All that matters is the wood, the tools, and the unyielding standards set by the dark water waiting just beyond the stones. The day has begun, and the work is waiting. The rhythm of the day is governed by the wood. Beside the ship's frame lies a formidable stack of raw oak planks, each one thick and heavy as a tombstone. This is the great challenge, not the sea, not the cold, but the unyielding nature of the timber itself. Each plank is a solid wall of resistance, a weight that must be moved, and a stiffness that must be overcome through immense effort and patience. The process begins with a single plank. The body is positioned, the knees are bent, and a firm grip is taken on the rough, splintery edges. The muscles in the back and legs tighten in a coordinated sequence, and the plank is lifted from the stack. It is a slow, controlled explosion of force. The weight is immense, pressing down, demanding perfect balance and a steady, rhythmic breath to manage the strain. With the plank held tight against the torso, a slow walk begins. Each step is a deliberate act, a careful placement of a foot on the shifting stones of the beach. The world narrows to the few feet of ground directly ahead. The sound is of the grinding stones and the deep, controlled exhalation of air from the lungs. The destination is a long, low pit near the water's edge, where steam rises in a constant plume. The heavy timber is lowered onto two trestles. There is no sound of relief, only the solid report of wood meeting wood. The hands are inspected. The skin is raw, embedded with tiny wooden thorns from the raw surface of the oak. These are brushed away without thought. You feel the deep ache beginning to settle into the muscles of the lower back, a familiar and constant companion in this work. An adze is taken from a leather tool roll. The wooden handle is smooth and dark from years of use, shaped perfectly to the grip. The steel head is heavy, its curved cutting edge sharpened to a fine, polished line. The tool is an extension of the arm, its weight a familiar counterpoint to the lightness of the air. It is lifted and settled, finding the proper balance before the first cut is made. The work of shaping begins. The adze is swung in a steady, hypnotic arc. With each strike, a large, curled shaving of pale oak flies away from the plank. The sound is a sharp, percussive chop that echoes briefly in the damp air. The goal is to remove the excess wood, to bring the plank closer to its final, curved shape, following the faint charcoal lines marked on its surface. This is the core of the rhythm, the lift, the carry, the shaping. The body moves through the sequence of tasks without conscious thought. The muscles have a memory of their own. Another plank is fetched from the stack. The same strain, the same slow walk, the same careful placement. The pile of shaped planks grows slowly, each one a testament to the quiet, repetitive labor that fills the long, gray hours. You notice the sun has moved, a slight brightening in the gray canvas overhead. Time is measured not in hours, but in the number of planks prepared. The rhythm is broken only for a moment to take on water from a wooden bucket. The liquid is cold, tasting faintly of wood smoke and iron. It is a brief pause in the ceaseless motion, a moment of stillness before the cycle begins again. The steam pit is a long trough filled with water, heated from below by a slow-burning fire. The shaped planks are laid over the trough and covered with heavy, damp animal hides. The heat and moisture begin their slow work, penetrating deep into the dense grain of the oak. This is a different kind of labor, the work of waiting, of letting one element transform another through patient application. The hands move over the surface of a newly shaped plank. The raw, splintery texture is gone, replaced by the smooth, undulating surface left by the adze. The wood is still cold and hard, its inner tension locked away. But soon after the steam has done its work, it will be forced to yield. The daily rhythm is a long, slow argument with the wood, a conversation conducted not with words, but with steel, fire, and muscle. There is one law here, one inescapable truth that governs every action. It is the sea. The dark, cold water of the fjord is the final inspector of all work. It does not bargain or forgive. A single weak rivet, one poorly joined seam, or a plank not bent to the perfect curve invites a catastrophic failure. The sea is a silent authority, its judgment absolute. Every swing of the axe is measured against this final, impartial test. The forest that looms over the fjord provides the raw material, but it does so with its own set of rules. Only certain trees are chosen, those whose grain flows in long, unbroken lines, ideal for the curved strakes of the hull. To fell the wrong tree is to waste generations of growth and invite weakness into the ship's frame. You feel the immense weight of this tradition, a knowledge passed down through silent observation, not recorded words. The tools themselves impose a strict discipline. The broad axe demands respect for its weight and keen edge. A moment of inattention results not in punishment, but in a ruined piece of timber, a waste of precious material and hours of labor. The auger must be held perfectly straight, the pressure steady, to drill a clean hole. Each tool has its own silent language of balance and resistance that must be understood and obeyed. The seasons dictate the pace of the work. The long, slow light of summer allows for the felling of timber and the shaping of the great keel. But as the light fades and the autumn rains begin, the work must move under the shelter of the hull itself. The rising tide becomes a clock, its slow advance up the stony beach, a constant reminder that the lower strakes of the hull must be completed before the winter storms arrive. There is a precise order to the construction, a sequence that cannot be broken. The keel is laid first, the ship's spine. Then the ribs are fixed, defining the shape. Only then can the planks be attached, starting from the keel and working upward in overlapping layers. To deviate from this method is to build chaos into the very bones of the vessel. The integrity of the whole depends on the perfection of each preceding step. Measurement is done not with marked rulers, but with lengths of cord and knotted strings. These are the sacred texts of the boat builder, a physical record of proportions that have been proven against the sea for generations. A handspan, the length of a forearm, astride these are the units that define the ship. They connect the vessel directly to the human body that builds it, creating a silent harmony between the creator and the creation. You notice how the wind from the sea carries a fine, corrosive salt. Any iron tool left exposed overnight will show the first signs of rust by morning. This is another impartial rule of the world. All tools must be meticulously cleaned with oil and sand, then wrapped in waxed leather at the end of each day. The sea is not just a destination, it is a constant presence, always testing, always trying to reclaim the materials. The grain of the wood is the ultimate guide. It tells the story of the tree's life, of its struggles against wind and weather. The carpenter must learn to read this silent story, to know which way the wood will split, where it is strongest, and where it is most likely to bend. To work against the grain is to fight a losing battle, to force a weakness into the structure that the sea will inevitably find. A heavy, expectant stillness often settles over the work site. It is the silence of deep concentration, a shared understanding that permeates the air. There are no shouted orders or loud discussions. A gesture, a pointed finger, a shared glance is all that is needed. The work itself is the only conversation, a dialogue between hands and wood, guided by the silent, unyielding laws of the craft and the sea. You feel a profound sense of responsibility, not to a person, but to the object being created. The ship is more than wood and iron. It is a promise of safe passage, a vessel designed to withstand the worst the world can offer. This is the core reality. The work must be perfect not to please a master, but because the lives of others will one day depend on the integrity of every cut, every joint, and every rivet. The catalyst arrives not as a command, but as a change in the air. One morning, the familiar scent of salt and pine is joined by something else, a sharp, clean coldness that speaks of deep frost in the high country. It is the first breath of winter, a silent and impartial announcement. The season is turning, the time for preparation is ending, and the great work of assembly must now begin in earnest. This new coldness changes the quality of the light. The sun, though still low, seems brighter, its rays cutting through the mist with a new clarity. Long, sharp shadows are cast by the ribs of the ship's skeleton. You notice the way the cold makes the metal of the axe head ring, with a higher, clearer note when it strikes the wood. Every sound is amplified, every detail brought into sharper focus by the crispness of the air. The tide line seems different now. The dark seaweed left on the stones is rimmed with a delicate fringe of white frost, a fragile and temporary silver. The slow, patient rhythm of the sea continues, but its touch now carries a new urgency. The water itself looks denser, darker, as if gathering its strength for the coming storms. The ship must be strong enough to meet this new power, to be born into a harder world. This first frost is the true commission. It is a demand issued by the landscape itself. There is no scroll sealed with wax, no chieftain's herald. The authority is the unyielding cycle of the seasons. The hull must be made whole and watertight before the fjord begins to freeze at its edges, before the heavy snows make the work of moving timber impossible. The work now has a new tempo, a silent pulse driven by the turning of the earth. The change brings a new focus to the daily rhythm. The work of shaping individual planks is set aside. The attention shifts to the greater whole, to the vast wooden skeleton waiting on the beach. The task is no longer about creating the parts, but about bringing them together in a perfect, harmonious union. You feel a shift in the body, a gathering of energy, a deep readiness for the next phase of the labor. The steam from the bending pit now billows in thick, white clouds, a stark contrast to the sharp blue of the sky. The heat feels more intense against the cold air on the skin. The transition is palpable. The slow, preparatory work of summer and autumn has reached its natural conclusion. Now comes the intense, focused effort of construction, a battle not against the wood's resistance, but against the steady march of the coming winter. A new set of tools is laid out on a clean stretch of hide near the keel. These are the instruments of assembly: heavy hammers, iron rivets with their disc-like heads, and the long-handled tongs for pulling them from the fire. Their presence is a quiet declaration. The time for carving is over. The time for binding, for joining, for making one solid thing from many disparate pieces has arrived. The great stack of shaped oak planks, once a symbol of endless labor, now looks like a collection of possibilities. Each one has been cut and steamed, ready to find its place on the curving hull. They are no longer individual pieces of timber. They are the skin of the vessel, the shield against the sea. The challenge is to fit them together so perfectly that no light and no water can pass between them. A deep sense of purpose settles with the cold. The pressure is not of fear, but of profound duty to the craft. The ship has been promised to the sea, and the season is now calling for that promise to be kept. It is a silent contract between the builder, the materials, and the immense, powerful world they inhabit. The time has come to raise the hull and close the final gaps against the coming cold. The final light of the day lingers longer now, a cold, clear twilight that paints the fjord in shades of deep purple and silver. In this light, the ship's frame looks less like a skeleton and more like a vessel taking its first breath. You feel the deep, internal shift from patience to urgency, a silent acceptance of the season's command. The work is ready, the builder is ready, the commission has been given. The workshop is not a building with walls and a roof, but a space created by the ship itself. To enter it is to duck under the high, curving side of the hull, passing from the open gray light into a world of shadow and wood. The air changes instantly. It is still and protected, thick with the scent of pine tar and raw oak. The endless horizon of the fjord is gone, replaced by the close presence of the timbers. The first act is one of order. A large, stiff rectangle of cured animal hide is unrolled upon the stones. The surface is dark and stained from long use. Upon this ground, the tools for assembly are placed one by one. The heavy hammers, the steel punches, the sharp-bladed reamers. Each has its specific place. The sound is of metal gently touching leather, a series of quiet, deliberate reports in the enclosed space. A heavy leather apron, stiff with cold and hardened by pine tar, is lifted. It is secured around the waist with a simple knot. The leather is a shield, a second skin against stray splinters and the intense heat of the forge. You feel its familiar weight settle on the legs, a physical signal that the time for a different kind of work has begun. The world of lifting and carrying is left behind. The forge is a small, portable furnace made of stacked stones and clay. A handful of dry kindling is placed inside, followed by lumps of charcoal. With a strike of flint against steel, a shower of sparks is cast onto the tinder. A slow, careful breath of air is blown into the nascent flame, coaxing it to life. The first orange glow pushes back against the deep shadows under the hull. The hands are then plunged into a wooden bucket filled with frigid seawater. The cold is a piercing shock, washing away the grime of the day and bringing a sharp, clear sensation to the skin. It is a ritual of purification, a cleansing of the hands before they undertake the precise work of joining. The water drips from the fingertips onto the stones, the only sound in the growing quiet. You notice the way the light from the small forge dances on the curved planks above. The grain of the wood seems to move, the shadows shifting like living things. The world outside this wooden cave has vanished. The sound of the sea is now a distant, muffled rhythm, its power held at bay by the shell of the new hull. The only important sounds are the crackle of the charcoal and the steady beat of the heart. The focus narrows completely. The universe is now this small circle of dim light, the row of waiting tools, and the section of the hull to be joined. The cold air, the distant cry of a seabird, the weight of the skyall of these dissolve. All that remains is the task at hand. The body becomes an instrument, guided by a singular, silent purpose held deep within the mind. A stillness descends. This is the true threshold. It is not a physical door, but a mental one. A state of complete presence is achieved, a quiet harmony between the body, the tools, and the material. There is no thought of the finished ship or of the winter to come. There is only the next rivet, the next hammer blow, the next perfect seam. The air in the forge begins to shimmer with heat. The charcoal glows with a fierce internal light, ready to receive the first iron rivet. This small, contained fire is the heart of the new workspace, a source of transformative energy. You feel its heat on the face, a stark contrast to the cold air on the back. The space is prepared. The mind is focused. The work can now proceed. Under the hull, the world is transformed into a wooden cavern. The air is still and heavy, dense with the smells of pine tar, wood smoke, and the sharp scent of cooling iron. It is a space filled with a profound and waiting silence. You feel this quiet not as an absence of sound, but as a powerful presence, a weight of accumulated knowledge that settles deep in the bones. The work done here is part of a long, unbroken line. At the edge of the forge light sits a silent figure, the master builder. He does not watch with a critical eye, but simply exists within the space, his presence as natural as the stone keel blocks. His hands resting on his knees are a landscape of scars and swollen knuckles, a physical record of 1,000 ships built. His stillness is an anchor, a source of the deep calm that permeates this sheltered world. The tools laid out on the leather sheet seem to hold a memory of their own. The hammer's wooden handle is dark and smooth, worn into perfect shape by a grip that has held it for decades. The steel head is dented and marked, each imperfection a testament to a rivet driven home correctly. These are not mere objects, they are extensions of a tradition, passed from one hand to the next, carrying the skill of generations within them. Faint charcoal lines curve along the raw oak planks of the hull. They are a silent language of form and function, a map of the forces the ship will endure. These marks are the only instructions, a visual echo of a deep understanding of how wood and water interact. To follow them is to participate in a conversation that began long before this ship was ever conceived. The knowledge is not in the mind, but in the eye and the hand. You feel the weight of this lineage. It is not a burden of expectation, but a profound sense of connection, of being a single link in a strong chain. There is a solemnity here, an understanding that this process is larger than any one person. The creation of the ship is a ritual, and this space beneath the hull is the sacred ground where it is performed. The focus required is a form of deep respect. The master builder's gaze is not on the worker, but on the wood. A slow, deliberate hand is raised, a single finger pointing toward a complex joint where two planks meet the stern post. It is not a command, but a shared point of focus, a silent transfer of attention. The gesture says everything that needs to be said. This point is important. This is where the ship's strength will be tested. The charcoal in the forge settles, sending a fresh shower of orange sparks into the enclosed air. The light flickers across the curved walls of the hull, making the grain of the oak seem to shift and flow like water. For a moment, the space feels ancient, a self-contained world governed only by the laws of wood, iron, and fire. The distant murmur of the sea is a reminder of the purpose of this sacred work. A cold iron rivet is placed into the heart of the glowing coals with a pair of long tongs. A new scent fills the air, the sharp, almost bitter smell of heating metal. It is the smell of imminent transformation, the scent of something being prepared to bind two separate pieces into a single, unbreakable whole. The sound is a low hiss, the voice of the fire beginning its work on the unyielding iron. The silence deepens, becoming even more focused. It is a silence filled with the unspoken truths of the craft. That haste leads to weakness, that every seam must be perfect, that the sea will find any flaw. This quiet is a tool in itself, a necessary condition for the level of concentration demanded. It sharpens the senses and clarifies the mind, leaving only the task at hand. There is a sense of awe in this small, protected world. It is the feeling of being a custodian of an ancient and vital art. The knowledge is not learned from a book, but absorbed through the skin, through the muscles, through the very air itself. Here, under the belly of the beast being born, the weight of tradition is not a pressure, but a powerful and steadying foundation upon which to build. The core principle of the work is harmony. It is the art of making two separate things act as one, of joining wood and iron so perfectly that the seam itself becomes a source of strength. This code is not documented in any text. It lives in the hands of the master builder. Now, the master rises from the shadows, a silent signal that the demonstration is about to begin. The body of the apprentice becomes still, an act of pure observation. The master builder selects an auger, its long steel shaft ending in a sharpened spiral point. The tool is not held with a tense grip, but is balanced lightly in the hands. It is brought to the overlapping planks of the hull, where a small charcoal mark indicates the correct position. You notice the angle is not perpendicular to the wood, but is aligned with the unseen forces that will stress the hull at sea. A slow, steady pressure is applied. The wooden handle of the auger is turned with a smooth, continuous motion. There is no rush, no application of brute force. The sharp steel edges do the work, peeling away a perfect, unbroken curl of pale oak. The sound is a low, satisfying whisper of slicing wood. The hole is drilled clean through both overlapping planks, a perfect, dark circle in the timber. From the forge, a single rivet is lifted with the tongs. It glows with a bright orange-yellow light, a small captive sun against the gloom under the hull. The rivet is carried to the newly drilled hole and inserted from the outside. A brief, sharp hiss is heard as the hot iron meets the damp wood, and a thin wisp of aromatic smoke rises, carrying the scent of scorched oak. On the inside of the hull, a small, square iron washer is slipped over the hot shaft of the rivet. Then, a heavy block of solid iron, the dolly, is pressed firmly against it. The master builder's entire body weight is channeled through the arm into this block, creating an unyielding anvil. The pressure is immense and absolutely steady. This is the silent, anchoring half of the process. Now a hammer is taken up. The tool is held near the end of the handle to maximize the force of the swing. The first blow is struck upon the head of the glowing rivet. The sound is a low, dull thud, a sound of absorption as the soft, hot iron begins to spread. The vibration travels through the planks, a deep pulse felt in the hands and in the chest. The blows continue in a steady, deliberate rhythm, not fast, but perfectly spaced, allowing the metal to be shaped rather than simply flattened. You notice how the sound begins to change with each strike. The low thud gradually transforms, becoming a higher, sharper tone as the rivet cools and hardens, filling every microscopic space in the wooden hole. The dull sound of impact becomes the clear ring of solid, unified materials. The head of the rivet is no longer a simple cylinder. Under the precise blows of the hammer, it has been formed into a smooth, low dome. On the inside, the shaft has been flattened over the iron washer, clamping it tight. The two separate planks are now bound by a single piece of iron that has been shaped to hold them in a state of constant, immense compression. They are no longer two, but one. The master builder removes the heavy iron dolly and gestures toward the newly formed rivet head. A finger traces the perfect, seamless join between the cooled, dark iron and the pale oak. There is no gap, no sign of fracture. The wood and metal are in perfect union. This is the code. This is the harmony that turns a collection of parts into a vessel that can face the sea. Then a transfer occurs. The heavy iron dolly is passed over, its weight a surprise. A heavy hand on the shoulder guides the apprentice into position on the inside of the hull. The master builder moves to the outside, hammer in hand. The roles are now reversed. The code has been shown. Now it must be executed. The silent expectation is heavier than any spoken command. The true learning begins. You feel the profound simplicity of the task and its immense complexity. It is a dance of pressure and impact, of heat and force, performed in perfect silence. The harmony is not just in the materials, but between the two builders working in unison. One anchors, the other strikes, both guided by the changing sound that tells them when the union is complete and the work is perfect. This world under the hull is a sanctuary of focus. The high, arching planks form a protective shell, shutting out the vast, open sky and the endless horizon of the fjord. All that exists is the enclosed space, a long, low tunnel of wood. The light is dim, provided only by the pulsing orange glow of the forge at one end. This limited light sharpens the senses, forcing a complete reliance on touch and sound. The walls of this sanctuary are the raw, unfinished oak of the hull itself. They curve up and away, a series of overlapping strakes that create a ribbed, organic texture. The air is still, trapped and warmed by the heat of the forge. You feel this stillness as a physical presence, a thick blanket that dampens sound and allows for an intense level of concentration. The outside world is a distant, forgotten memory. Yet, this space is also a cage. The low clearance of the hull forces the body into a constant crouch. Movement is restricted, confined to a narrow channel along the central keel. To stand fully is impossible. The muscles in the back and thighs are in a state of sustained tension, a constant reminder of the physical constraints of the workspace. The ship provides shelter, but it also demands a physical submission. The floor is the cold, uneven stone of the beach. It is a source of persistent dampness and a challenging surface for balance. The tools, the forge, the bucket of water, everything must be placed with care to prevent it from tipping. You notice the way the body learns to brace itself against the keel, using the spine of the ship for stability. The ground is a constant, humbling reality within this otherwise curated space. The only exit is the way one entered, a low opening at the stern. But to look toward it is to see only a blinding patch of gray light. The eyes, having adjusted to the deep shadows of the interior, cannot process the outside world. To leave is to be struck by a sudden, overwhelming flood of sensory information. It is easier to stay within the gloom, to remain in the singular focus of the work. The air quality shifts throughout the day. In the beginning, it is clean and smells of raw wood. As the forge heats up and the riveting begins, it becomes thick with the acrid smoke of scorched oak and the metallic tang of cooling iron. A breath taken too deeply can be sharp and stinging. This is the atmosphere of creation, a potent and sometimes overwhelming byproduct of the transformation taking place. The acoustics of the space are unique. Every sound is amplified and contained. The sharp tap of a hammer, the scrape of a tool on stone, the sizzle of hot metal in the quenching bucket, each noise is intimate and immediate. You feel the vibrations of the hammer blows not just in the ears, but through the feet, up from the stones, and through the timbers of the hull itself. The ship is becoming an instrument. This cage of wood and stone offers a profound kind of freedom. Freedom from the wind and the cold. Freedom from the vast, distracting landscape. It is a space designed for one purpose and one purpose only: the perfect execution of a single task. The confinement of the body allows for a complete liberation of the mind, allowing it to focus with an intensity that would be impossible in the open air. The passing of time is marked only by the consumption of materials. The pile of unused rivets shrinks. The stack of charcoal by the forge diminishes. Within this sanctuary, there is no day or night, only a continuous present moment defined by the rhythm of the work. The world is reduced to a simple, powerful loop. Heat the iron, drive the rivet, create the harmony. The tools are not separate objects, but extensions of the hand and the will. They are a silent language understood by wood and iron. When a hand closes around a handle, there is no separation between flesh and material. The mind does not think of lifting a hammer. It thinks of delivering a blow, and the arm and the tool act as a single, unified instrument to achieve that purpose. The body adapts to their weight and balance. The riveting hammer is the most active of these partners. Its handle is a length of dark, smooth ash, worn to a soft polish by the constant friction of a palm. It is thinner in the middle, swelling at the end, a shape created not by a carver, but by years of a specific grip. You feel how it fits the hand perfectly, a negative space molded by its user. The knowledge of its balance is held deep in the muscles. When the hammer is lifted, its weight is all in the steel head, a compact block of iron with two faces, one flat for striking, the other rounded for shaping. The head is scarred and pitted, a testament to countless impacts with glowing iron. It is not an instrument of violence, but of precise and rapid sculpting. Its cold, heavy presence in the hand is a promise of the force it can deliver when swung. The swing is a controlled fall, a release of potential energy in a perfect arc. The hammer guides the arm, not the other way around. The moment of impact is a flash of sound and sensation. A sharp, ringing report that travels through the metal head, down the wooden handle, and into the bones of the arm. It is a communication from the rivet, telling of its temperature and malleability through the vibration. The dolly is the hammer's silent counterpart. It is a simple, heavy block of crude iron, fist-sized and shaped for no other purpose than to resist. It has no handle, only a rough, pitted surface that is cool to the touch. Its great density gives it an immense inertia. To lift it is to feel the unyielding pull of the earth itself, a weight that speaks of pure, passive strength and endurance. This block is pressed against the hot rivet shaft from inside the hull. The body must lean into it, bracing against the keel, channeling its own weight into the unmoving iron. You feel the deep, penetrating cold of the metal, a stark contrast to the forge's heat. The dolly becomes an anvil, an extension of the builder's own stability. It does not act, it simply holds, providing the solid foundation against which the hammer's work can be done. When the hammer strikes the rivet on the outside, the force travels through the hot iron and into the dolly. The vibration is not a sharp shock, but a deep, resonant pulse that floods the hands and arms holding it. You feel the very structure of the ship tremble with each blow. The dolly is a listening device, translating the violence of the hammer into a language of pressure that the body can understand and absorb. The auger is a tool of quiet precision. It consists of a wooden T-handle, polished smooth by turning hands, and a long, spiraling steel shaft. The end of the shaft is a sharpened screw point, designed to bite into the wood and pull the rest of the tool forward. Its purpose is not to smash or break, but to peel away the material in a single, continuous ribbon, leaving a perfect void in its place. The point is set against the charcoal mark on the timber. The initial turn requires firm pressure to set the blade. Then, the motion becomes a smooth, rhythmic rotation of the handle. The muscles of the shoulders and back are engaged in a steady, circular pull and push. The only sound is a low, whispering scrape as the sharpened steel flute shaves away the oak. It is the sound of controlled, effortless removal. A perfect, coiled shaving of wood emerges from the hole, unbroken from start to finish. It is warm to the touch and smells sweetly of the deep forest. This fragile curl is the proof of the auger's sharpness and the steadiness of the hand that guides it. A clean hole, without splintering or tearing, is a silent testament to the mastery of the tool. It creates the perfect space for the rivet to occupy. Together, these tools form a trinity of creation. The auger opens the way. The hammer delivers the transformative force. The dolly provides the unyielding support. They are a system, a set of physical arguments that convince the stubborn oak and the hard iron to join together in a bond of permanent, harmonious strength. The hands that wield them are merely the conduits for their ancient, effective language. The old rhythm of lifting and carrying the great planks is gone. The new daily cycle is smaller, more focused, confined to the shadows beneath the hull. It begins not with the strain of a full-body lift, but with the small, precise act of feeding charcoal to the forge. The day's tempo is no longer dictated by the slow shaping of wood, but by the rapid heating and cooling of iron. The work is a steady, repeating loop. A hole is drilled with the auger's quiet whisper. The rivet is heated to a glowing yellow in the forge. It is carried to the hole, inserted, and then the percussive sound of the hammer begins. The sequence is repeated again and again, a chain of actions linking one plank to the next. You feel the deep satisfaction of this rhythm, of visible progress made with each perfectly formed rivet. Sustenance is taken in the middle of the day, a brief pause in the relentless cycle. It is not a communal meal, but a solitary act of refueling within the workspace. A chunk of dark, heavy bread, dense with rye and barley, is taken from a cloth bag. It is tough to chew and tastes of earth and faint sourness. It is fuel, nothing more, a solid weight in the stomach to power the muscles through the rest of the day. Alongside the bread is a piece of dried fish, its skin stiff and silvery. The flesh is torn off in strips, intensely salty and tasting of the sea and the smokehouse where it was cured. The salt stings the lips and creates a powerful thirst. You notice how the simple, powerful flavors cut through the dense air of the workshop, a brief, sharp reminder of the world outside this wooden cave. Water is drunk from a wooden ladle dipped into a bucket. It is the same cold, clean water from the fjord, but here in the enclosed space, it seems to taste different. It has a mineral sharpness, a taste of the stones at the bottom of the bucket. It cools the throat, which is dry and raspy from the forge smoke, and provides a moment of pure, clean sensation before the work resumes. The body adapts to this new routine. The large muscles of the back and legs, once the primary engines of labor, now serve a supporting role, bracing the body in its constant crouch. The smaller, more precise muscles of the arms, wrists, and hands are now the focus. They learn the exact amount of force needed to swing the hammer, the steady pressure required to hold the dolly, the smooth rotation that drives the auger. The senses also recalibrate. The eyes become accustomed to the dim light, able to pick out the fine details of the wood grain and the subtle color changes in the heating iron. The ears learn to interpret the language of the hammer, to hear the exact moment when the rivet is fully set, and the tone changes from a dull thud to a high, clear ring. The work becomes a conversation conducted through sound and vibration. As the gray light outside begins to fade, the forge's glow becomes the only source of illumination. The shadows deepen and the world shrinks further, becoming nothing more than the small circle of orange light. The work does not stop with the sun. It continues until a certain number of rivets have been set, a goal determined not by a clock, but by a silent, shared understanding of what constitutes a day's labor. The end of the day is a slow unwinding. The fire in the forge is banked with ash. The tools are wiped clean of soot and sweat, their metal oiled against the corrosive salt air. They are laid back in their proper places on the leather sheet. You feel the deep, satisfying ache in the arms and shoulders, the thrumming fatigue of muscles that have been tested and used well. The gauntlet begins not with a hammer blow, but with a quiet, preparatory ritual. The focus narrows to a single material, the sealant that will make the hull watertight. A small iron pot is placed over the glowing embers of the forge. Into this pot are placed chunks of dark, sticky pine tar. The heat begins its slow work, and the tar begins to melt, releasing a thick medicinal smoke that fills the enclosed space. Next, a handful of animal hair, coarse and dark, is taken from a leather pouch. It is slowly fed into the melting tar. A wooden stick is used to stir the mixture, a slow, circular motion that combines the two elements. The hair dissolves into the black liquid, its fibers disappearing to become an invisible network of reinforcement. The sealant is being given a hidden strength, a resilience that will allow it to flex with the wood. The consistency of the mixture is everything. It must be thin enough to be worked into the seams, yet thick enough not to run. You notice the way the stirring stick begins to drag as the sealant thickens. A small amount of sheep's fat is added, and the mixture loosens, becoming smooth and glossy. The process is a careful balance of heat and ingredients, a silent conversation with the materials to achieve the perfect state. While the sealant cools slightly, another preparation begins. Long, thin cords of spun sheep's wool are unrolled. These cords, known as rove, have been soaked in the same pine tar, but are now dry and stiff. The task is to work them with the hands, softening them, making them pliable enough to be pressed into the narrow gaps between the planks of the hull. The tar stains the fingers, a sticky, fragrant residue. The work is methodical and unhurried. Each length of woolen cord is kneaded and stretched, the stiffness slowly yielding to the warmth and pressure of the hands. You feel the rough texture of the wool and the slight tackiness of the tar. This is a task of patience, of preparing the binding agent that will be the ship's final defense against the constant pressure of the sea. There can be no flaws in this material. A specialized tool is selected, a caulking iron. It is not a sharp blade, but a flat, blunt wedge of steel with a wooden handle. Its purpose is not to cut, but to drive the woolen cord deep into the seams. Its edge is perfectly smooth, designed to pack the rove without cutting or fraying the delicate fibers. The tool is cool and heavy in the hand, a solid instrument of compression. The sealant in the pot has now cooled to the ideal temperature. It is still a liquid, but a thick, slow-moving one. It no longer steams, but its surface shines like black glass in the forge light. A wooden paddle is dipped into the pot and lifted. A thick, dark ribbon of the sealant flows slowly from its edge, a sign that it is ready. The raw ingredients have been transformed into a single, purposeful substance. A section of the hull is chosen. The seam between two overlapping planks is inspected. The gap is a thin, dark line, a space of potential weakness. This is the frontier that must be sealed. The prepared woolen cord is laid along this line, a soft, dark thread resting on the hard, pale oak. The materials are ready. The tools are ready. The stage is set for the final act of making the vessel whole. There is a profound calm in this preparation. It is a slow, deliberate process that cannot be rushed. Each step is essential. Each material must be brought to its perfect state before it can be used. You feel the deep sense of order in this work, the quiet satisfaction of transforming raw, disparate elements hair, wool into the vital substance that will ensure the ship's integrity. The foundation for success is laid in these quiet moments. Before the first blow is struck, a moment of absolute stillness descends. The hands, stained with tar, hover over the seam. The caulking iron is held in one hand, the wooden mallet in the other. The body is braced against the curve of the hull, feet planted firmly on the uneven stones. For a long moment, there is no movement, only a deep, gathering focus. The world outside this small act ceases to exist. The eye traces the long, dark line of the seam, from the stern post forward as far as the forge light will reach. It is a final inspection, a silent confirmation of the path the tool will take. The woolen cord lies waiting, a soft contrast to the hard edge of the wood. The gaze is not a casual glance, but an intense, penetrating scrutiny, memorizing the landscape of the joint before the work begins. A slow, deep breath is taken. The air is thick with the smells of tar and cooling embers. The breath is held, and in the resulting silence, the senses sharpen to a razor's edge. You feel the slight texture of the mallet's wooden handle, the cold weight of the iron tool, the solid pressure of the hull against the back. The body becomes a statue, a vessel of potential energy waiting for the signal to act. The tip of the caulking iron is brought to the woolen cord. There is no sound as the steel touches the soft fibers. The alignment is checked one last time. The angle of the tool must be perfect, not too steep to cut the cord, not too shallow to be ineffective. The world shrinks to this single point of contact, the dark line of the seam, the soft wool, and the hard, unyielding edge of the steel. The mind becomes completely clear. All thought of the finished ship, of the coming winter, of the ache in the muscles, falls away. There is only this seam, this tool, this single, impending action. It is a state of pure presence, a moment of perfect calibration between intent and material. The distance between the eye, the hand, and the tool disappears. They become a single, focused entity. You notice the faint, rhythmic pulse of blood in the ears, the only sound in the profound quiet. The muscles in the arm holding the mallet are tensed, not with strain, but with readiness. It is the stillness of the predator before the strike, of the wave before it breaks. Every fiber of the body is aligned and aimed toward the single task. This pause is not a moment of rest, but the most critical part of the process. The weight of the mallet is felt, its balance point known without thought. The mind calculates the precise amount of force needed for the first tap, enough to set the chord, but not so much as to damage the wood. This internal calibration is not a conscious thought, but a deep, instinctual knowledge born of endless repetition. The hand knows what the wood can withstand. The forge casts a low, steady light on the scene. The hand holding the caulking iron is completely steady, the steel tip resting motionless on the cord. The other hand, holding the mallet, is raised slightly, hovering in the air. The final moment of stillness stretches on, a pocket of suspended time. The entire universe has contracted to the space of a hand's breadth, to the gap between two planks of oak. Then, with the slow release of the held breath, the decision is made. The body commits to the action. The hovering mallet begins its short, controlled descent. The world, which had been held in a state of absolute quiet potential, is about to be filled with the sound of the work. The calibration is complete. The approach is over. The irreversible act is about to begin. The mallet makes contact with the head of the caulking iron. The sound is not a sharp crack, but a solid, woody thud. It is a sound of purpose, a signal that the state of stillness has been broken. The force of the blow travels down the steel shaft of the tool and into the woolen cord, driving it a fraction deeper into the seam. The outside world, with its sea and sky, vanishes completely. The entire being is now locked in a feedback loop of action and response. The eye observes the slight compression of the wool. The hand, guided by this visual cue, adjusts the angle of the caulking iron. The other hand delivers another blow with the mallet. The sound of the impact reports back, its pitch and resonance telling a story about the density of the packing. There is no thought, only this seamless flow of information. A rhythm is established, a steady, hypnotic beat of the mallet that becomes the new pulse of this small, enclosed world. Thud, shift, thud, shift. The caulking iron moves steadily along the seam, its blunt edge a plow folding the woolen cord into the dark furrow of the gap. You feel the vibration of each blow not in the ears, but in the hands and chest, a constant, rhythmic tremor. The scent of the pine tar intensifies with each impact. The pressure forces microscopic droplets of the sticky resin out from the wool fibers, releasing its sharp, medicinal perfume into the air. The smell becomes an integral part of the rhythm, a sensory confirmation that the cord is being properly compressed, its sealing properties fully activated. The world is now composed only of wood, wool, tar, and the sound of the mallet. The focus is so complete that the body seems to disappear. There is no longer a sense of a hand holding a tool, but only of the tool itself, acting with a perfect, directed intelligence. The line between the self and the work dissolves. The eye, the hand, the mallet, and the iron are all components of a single, efficient machine, dedicated to the task of sealing the seam. You notice the way the texture of the woolen cord changes under the pressure. It transforms from a soft, pliable rope into a dense, hard line of packing, almost as solid as the wood itself. The visual evidence of this transformation is the only measure of progress. The mind does not count the blows or measure the distance covered. It only assesses the quality of the seal, moment by moment. The muscles of the arm and shoulder operate without fatigue, locked into the smooth, efficient arc of the mallet's swing. The motion is economical, with no wasted energy. It is a movement perfected by thousands of repetitions, a physical memory stored deep in the fibers of the muscles. The body has become an instrument of the rhythm, a pendulum swinging in perfect, steady time. The world outside the immediate circle of work is a blur. The forge is a hazy orange glow in the periphery. The great ribs of the ship are indistinct shadows. The only reality is the few inches of the seam directly in front of the eyes. This hyperfocus is a form of sanctuary, a state of mind where there is no past or future, only the continuous, unfolding present of the work itself. The work arrives at a critical point, a complex joint where the plank curves sharply to meet the solid timber of the stern post. Here, the seam is not a straight line, but a tight, unforgiving arc. The rhythm is broken, the mallet is set down. This section cannot be done with percussive force. It requires a slow, deliberate application of pure pressure. The world, already small, shrinks even further. The caulking iron is repositioned, its handle now held in a two-handed grip. The breath, which had been flowing with the rhythm of the mallet, is now drawn in slowly and held. The muscles in the shoulders, back, and legs are tensed, not for a sharp impact, but for a sustained, controlled push. The body becomes a living press, preparing to exert its will upon the stubborn curve. The pressure begins. It is a gradual increase of force, a slow-motion transfer of weight from the feet through the braced body and into the hands holding the tool. The steel edge of the caulking iron bites into the woolen cord. You feel the initial resistance of the densely packed fibers and the unyielding hardness of the oak on either side. It is a negotiation with the limits of the materials. The angle of the tool is minutely adjusted. A tilt of the wrist, a shift of a fraction of an inch, changes the entire dynamic of the pressure. The eye is fixed on the point of contact, watching for the first signs of the wool beginning to yield. Too much pressure or the wrong angle, and the edge of the wooden plank could splinter. Not enough, and a fatal gap will remain. You notice the wood of the hull groaning under the immense, silent strain. It is not a loud sound, but a low, deep vibration felt through the hands and up into the arms. It is the sound of the ship's structure, resisting the force being applied to it. The entire body is now listening to this sound, using it as a guide to how much more pressure the joint can tolerate. The muscles in the forearms begin to tremble from the sustained effort. The held breath creates a building pressure in the chest. Still, the force is increased, slowly, incrementally. The woolen cord begins to deform, flattening and spreading to fill the microscopic voids in the curved seam. It is a moment of intense, silent struggle, a contest between the strength of the body and the integrity of the oak. Then, a subtle shift occurs. The initial resistance lessens. The caulking iron moves a fraction deeper into the seam, the woolen cord finally compressing into the tightest part of the curve. The wooden groan subsides, replaced by a feeling of solid, settled unity. You feel the exact moment when the joint becomes whole, when the pressure has achieved its purpose. The negotiation is over. The pressure is held for a long moment more, allowing the materials to settle into their new configuration. The force is then slowly, carefully released. The breath is exhaled in a long, controlled stream of air. The muscles, which had been locked in a state of extreme tension, are allowed to soften. The caulking iron is withdrawn, its steel edge leaving a smooth, compressed line of perfectly seated wool in its wake. With the pressure released, the tension drains from the body in a silent, invisible wave. The shoulders drop, the muscles in the back unlock, and a deep, shuddering breath is taken. The air, thick with tar and smoke, now feels cool and restorative as it fills the lungs. The moment of intense, focused strain has passed. The critical junction is sealed. A profound, internal quiet settles deep in the bones. The tools are set down on the leather sheet. The sound of the iron mallet meeting the cured hide is a soft, final thud. It is the sound of completion and punctuation mark at the end of a long and difficult sentence. The hands, freed from their task, are flexed. The fingers are stiff, imprinted with the texture of the tool handles. You feel the faint, residual tremor in the muscles, an echo of the intense effort. The focus begins to soften and expand. The world, which had shrunk to the size of a thumbnail, slowly returns to its previous dimensions. The eye is no longer fixed on the seam, but is now able to take in the larger sweep of the hull, the gentle curve of the planks, the row of dark, domed rivets marching in perfect formation. The hyper-focused state recedes, replaced by a broader, calmer awareness. The sounds of the world beyond the hull begin to filter back in. The first sound to return is the low, rhythmic murmur of the fjord, the slow wash of water against the stones. It is a sound that had been completely absent during the intense focus of the work, and its return is a gentle reminder of the ship's ultimate purpose. The silence is no longer absolute, but is now layered with the gentle pulse of the natural world. The warmth of the forge, which had been an unnoticed part of the background, now registers as a pleasant heat on the skin. The orange glow of the embers seems softer, less intense. The sharp, acrid smells of tar and scorched wood are still present, but they are no longer the entire world. They now mix with the faint, clean scent of salt and cold stone drifting in from the beach. A hand is placed flat against the newly sealed joint. The wood is cool and solid. The seam, once a line of potential failure, is now a source of strength. There is no splintering, no sign of fracture. The cord is seated deep and flush with the surface of the planks. It is a moment of quiet, tactile confirmation. The eye can be deceived, but the hand knows the truth of the surface. A sense of deep, calm satisfaction flows through the body. It is not a feeling of triumph, but of simple, profound rightness. A difficult and necessary task has been completed correctly. The integrity of the structure has been honored. This internal feeling of order and completion is the true reward for the intense physical and mental effort. The gauntlet has been passed. The test is over. The body is allowed to straighten from its long-held crouch. The muscles in the back and legs protest with a dull ache, but it is a good ache, a feeling of work well done. The head rises into the higher, cooler air near the top of the hull. The eyes look down the long, shadowed tunnel of the ship's interior, seeing not a series of individual tasks, but the emerging shape of a complete and unified vessel. The work is done, the final seam is packed, the last rivet set. The interior of the hull is now a complete and unbroken shell, a long wooden cocoon resting in the dim light. A slow walk begins from stern to bow, an inspection not of individual parts, but of the continuous, flowing whole. The hand slides along the uppermost plank, feeling the smooth, undulating surface left by the adze and the fine, almost invisible lines of the sealed joints. The master builder rises from his position by the dying forge. His movements are slow and deliberate. He too begins an inspection, but his is different. His gaze is not on the broad curves, but on the minute details. The eye of the master sweeps over the rows of rivet heads, checking for uniformity in shape and spacing. His is the look of a man comparing the work not to a plan, but to an ideal held within the mind. A gnarled, weathered hand is placed over the critical joint at the stern post, the site of the intense, silent struggle. The fingers, thick with callus, trace the line of the compressed wool. They press and probe, feeling for any softness, any give, any hint of a void beneath the surface. It is the touch of a musician testing the tension of a string, a purely tactile form of judgment. The inspection continues in this profound silence. The only sounds are the soft scuff of leather boots on the stony ground and the distant cry of a seabird. You feel the weight of this silent assessment. It is more intense than any spoken critique. The work is being measured against a standard of perfection that has been upheld for generations, a standard dictated by the unforgiving nature of the sea itself. The master builder pauses at the bow. He crouches down, his face close to the overlapping planks where they sweep up to meet the prow. The light from the dying embers of the forge is faint here, but it is enough. He squints, his vision attuned to the subtle language of shadow and form. He is looking for the harmony in the curves, the visual evidence that the ship will cut through the water cleanly, without resistance. Then, a simple gesture. The master builder takes up the riveting hammer, not by its handle, but by its head. He uses the rounded end of the wooden handle to tap lightly against the side of the hull. The sound that returns is not the flat, dead thud of separate planks, but a clear, resonant tone, a low, woody hum that seems to hang in the still air. The ship sings. He taps again, a little further down, and the same clear, musical note answers. The entire hull is vibrating as a single, unified object. The countless individual pieces, the keel, the ribs, the planks, the thousands of iron rivets, have been brought together so perfectly that they now possess a single voice. The sound is the ultimate proof of the work's integrity. It is the sound of harmony made manifest. A slow, deliberate nod is given. It is a small movement, almost imperceptible in the deep shadows, but its meaning is absolute. The work is not just acceptable, it is correct. It meets the standard. The nod is not a gesture of praise, but one of acknowledgement. It is a silent, shared understanding that the ancient code has been honored, that the promise to the sea has been kept. You feel a profound release. The internal pressure of the task, the weight of responsibility to the craft, dissolves in that single, quiet gesture. The boon is not a reward to be given, but a state that has been achieved. The finished hull, strong and resonant, is its own reward. Its very existence is the only approval that matters. The work now stands as a testament to the skill and focus poured into it. The master builder places the hammer back on the leather sheet, its role in this creation now finished. He turns and moves toward the opening at the stern, his silhouette framed for a moment against the pale gray light of the outside world. There is no backward glance. None is needed. The work speaks for itself, its voice a low hum that continues to fade slowly into the deep silence of the wooden sanctuary. The focus returns to the object itself. The hull is a thing of immense and subtle beauty. The alternating light and dark lines of the oak grain flow along its length like currents in a river. The rows of dark rivets are like stitches, binding the wooden skin together with geometric precision. It is a perfect marriage of natural form and human discipline, a physical embodiment of the harmony that was the guiding principle of its creation. A final, slow breath is taken. The air is still thick with the scents of labor tar, smoke, and hot iron, but now they are the smells of completion. They are the perfume of a difficult thing done well. The long gauntlet is over, and what remains is this silent, powerful, and resonant form, waiting patiently in the dim light for the sea that it was born to meet. The inspection is over. The work is true. The body emerges from beneath the hull, unfolding from its long-held crouch into the vast, open air. The change is immediate and overwhelming. The gray light of the fading day seems impossibly bright, and the world feels immense after the confinement of the wooden sanctuary. A deep breath is taken, and the air is clean, sharp, and cold, washing the lungs of the dense smoke and tar. It is a moment of pure sensory release. The hammer, its work now complete, is dropped into the sand at the water's edge. It is a final, percussive sound, the soft thud of iron meeting wet grit. The weight is gone from the hand. The arm, free of its tool, feels strangely light. This simple act is a full stop, a physical declaration that the long labor is over. The hand that held the hammer now hangs empty, its tension draining away into the cold air. The setting sun has broken through the clouds for a moment, and a low, horizontal band of orange light now paints the western sky. It casts long, dark shadows from the stones on the beach and illuminates the finished hull with a warm, golden glow. The pale oak seems to drink in the light, its surface transformed from a dull gray to a rich, honeyed color. The ship is bathed in a temporary and beautiful fire. The boots are pulled off, and the bare feet are placed upon the cold, wet sand near the tide line. The sensation is a shock, a sudden, piercing cold that travels up through the legs. It is a feeling of being intensely alive, of being directly connected to the raw, powerful elements of this world. The fine grit of the sand is a soft, abrasive texture against the calloused skin of the soles. Wading a few steps into the fjord, the water is even colder, a deep and penetrating chill that numbs the skin instantly. The water is perfectly clear, and the smooth, colored stones of the bottom are visible beneath the surface. You feel the slow, heavy pull of the outgoing tide against the ankles, a gentle but irresistible force. It is the first touch of the sea upon the body, a quiet introduction to the power the ship was built to withstand. The hands, stained black with tar and soot, are plunged into the salt water. The cold is a balm to the aching joints and the raw, chafed skin. The water stings the small cuts and scrapes, a sharp, cleansing pain. The hands are scrubbed together, the friction of skin against skin, working with the abrasive salt to slowly dissolve the grime of the day's work. The tar comes away in dark, oily slicks that float for a moment before dispersing. Looking back at the ship from the water's edge, its form is now complete and perfect against the darkening sky. It is no longer a collection of parts, a site of labor and struggle. It is a vessel, a finished thing. It possesses a powerful and silent presence, a sense of immense potential energy held in its resting form. It seems to be waiting, listening for the call of the deep water. A deep, bone-weary fatigue begins to settle in. It is not the sharp ache of a single strained muscle, but a profound, pervasive exhaustion that permeates every fiber of the body. It is the feeling of having given everything to the work, of having poured all available energy and focus into the creation of the object. It is a hollow, satisfying emptiness, the natural state that follows an act of intense creation. The last of the orange light fades from the horizon, and the world returns to shades of deep blue and gray. The first stars begin to appear in the clear, cold sky. The silence is now absolute, broken only by the gentle lapping of the water. The moment of release is not one of celebration, but of deep, quiet communion with the finished work and the vast, impartial world it will soon enter. There is a final look at the great, dark shape on the shore. The mind is empty, the body is spent, and a profound sense of peace descends. The struggle against the material is over. The harmony has been achieved, the standard has been met. There is nothing more to be done today. The work is finished, and it is good. The walk back up the stony beach is slow, each step a quiet testament to the satisfying weight of a completed journey. Hardship in this world is not seen as a punishment or a flaw, but as a fundamental condition of existence, like the tide or the cold. The philosophy of endurance is therefore not about complaint or resistance, but about skillful adaptation. It is visible in the low, turf-roofed houses, their forms hunkered down and dug into the earth, presenting a minimal profile to the relentless wind. They do not fight the storm, they yield to it. This philosophy is practiced daily in the conservation of energy. Movements are deliberate and efficient, with no wasted effort. A log is split with a single, perfectly aimed blow. A bucket of water is carried with a balanced, steady gait that minimizes spillage. You feel this principle in the body, in the way the muscles have learned to perform their tasks with the least possible strain, saving strength for the long, dark winter ahead. The tools themselves are embodiments of this belief. They are made of the simplest, strongest materials: iron, ash, oak, and are designed for a lifetime of use. When a handle breaks, it is not discarded, but replaced. When a cutting edge dulls, it is painstakingly sharpened. Endurance is built into the objects themselves, a silent lesson that what is broken can be mended, and that value lies in longevity, not novelty. You notice this philosophy in the very construction of the ship. The overlapping clinker planks are not a rigid, unyielding wall. The design allows the hull to flex, to twist slightly in the heavy seas, absorbing the immense power of the waves rather than trying to shatter them. The ship is built to bend, not break. It is a form of strength derived from suppleness, a deep understanding that true resilience requires flexibility. Endurance is also a communal act, performed in silent, shared understanding. When a heavy keel timber must be moved, many hands appear without being called. They position themselves, lift in unison, and disperse back to their own tasks once the work is done. There is no need for command or discussion. The hardship is a shared one, and the response to it is an instinctive, coordinated effort that binds the community together. This worldview accepts the reality of loss as a constant. A fishing boat may not return, a crop may fail, a winter may be harder than the last. The response is not despair, but a quiet, pragmatic adjustment. The remaining resources are reallocated, the routines are adapted. The grief is absorbed into the deep, stoic silence of the community. Life, like the sea, gives and takes, and the only sane response is to endure. The food itself is a testament to this philosophy. Smoked fish, salted meat, dried grains, these are foods transformed by hardship, made durable by the processes of preservation. They are not valued for their delicate flavors, but for their ability to sustain life through the lean months. Eating is a conscious act of taking in endurance, of consuming the stored energy that will be needed to face the coming cold and darkness. You feel this deep acceptance of difficulty in the scars on the hands. Each one is a record of a moment of struggle, a slip of the axe, a burn from the forge, a splinter from a raw plank. They are not seen as marks of failure, but as the natural cost of doing meaningful work. They are the physical documentation of a life spent in direct, unmediated contact with the hard realities of the material world. The long, dark winters are the ultimate test of this philosophy. The world shrinks to the dim light of the longhouse, the air thick with wood smoke. Time slows to a crawl. Survival depends on the work done during the long days of summer, on the stores of food and firewood, on the integrity of the turf roof. It is a season of quiet waiting, of conserving warmth and energy, of enduring the darkness with the absolute certainty that the light will return. This acceptance of hardship breeds a profound appreciation for moments of ease. The warmth of a fire on a cold night, the taste of the first fresh greens in the spring, the rare calm of the sea on a summer morning, these simple things are not taken for granted. They are seen as what they are, temporary respites in a world of constant challenge, moments of grace to be savored before the work of endurance begins again. Ultimately, the philosophy is one of deep respect for the power of the world. The people here know they are not its masters. They are small, temporary figures in a vast and ancient landscape of stone, wood, and water. Their survival depends not on conquering nature, but on understanding its rhythms and its rules, and on building their lives and their ships in perfect, humble harmony with its unyielding power. The seasons continue their slow, relentless cycle. The sun returns, the ice recedes, and the ships go out to sea. The work on the shore never ceases, but over the course of many years, a subtle change begins. It is not a sudden event, but a gradual, quiet fading, like the slow erosion of a stone in the tide. It begins not in the mind, but deep in the body, in the hands. The fingers, once so strong and sure, begin to stiffen in the morning chill. The joints swell, and a deep, persistent ache settles in. To close the hand into a tight fist now requires a conscious effort. The familiar grip on the axe handle is no longer as certain. You feel this change as a slow betrayal, a quiet refusal of the body to perform the tasks it has known for a lifetime. The eyes, too, begin their slow retreat. The sharp, clear world of wood grain and charcoal lines starts to soften at the edges. It becomes more difficult to distinguish the subtle shadows that reveal the perfect curve of a plank. The work must be held closer to the face, and the dim light under the hull becomes a deeper, more challenging gloom. The world is slowly losing its fine definition. The tools themselves bear witness to this long passage of time. The head of the riveting hammer, once a solid block of iron, is now visibly worn down, its face compressed and rounded from a million blows. The wooden handle of the adze is so thin in the middle from the friction of the hand that it seems almost fragile. The tools are spending themselves in service, their own substance being worn away with each ship that is built. The rhythm of the work slows. The powerful, efficient movements of youth are replaced by a more deliberate, measured pace. More frequent pauses are needed to rest the aching back, to let the fire return to the numbed hands. The great oak planks seem to have grown heavier over the years, their weight a more formidable challenge to the tired muscles. The work that was once a flow state now requires a greater act of will. One day, a young builder appears at the worksite. There is no announcement, no formal transfer. A heavy hand is simply placed on a shoulder, and a nod is given toward the stack of unworked timber. The master's role begins to shift. It is no longer to do the work, but to watch it being done. The hands, now stiff and unreliable, are retired from the labor, and the eyes become the primary tool. The knowledge is transferred not through words, but through presence. A gesture indicates a flaw in the grain of a plank. A raised finger corrects the angle of an auger. The body of the master becomes a living library, its posture and its gaze conveying the deep, silent code of the craft. You notice the deep satisfaction in this new role, the quiet pride in seeing the tradition continue in a new set of strong hands. There comes a morning when the walk down to the stony beach is too difficult. The joints ache with a fire that the morning sun cannot warm. The work site, with its familiar sounds and smells, is now a distant scene observed from the doorway of the longhouse. The hands which once built the great ships now struggle to hold a simple wooden cup. The body has declared its own retirement. The tools are passed on. They are not given as a gift, but as a trust. The young builder takes the worn hammer, its handle a perfect mold of another's grip, and the work continues. The sound of the mallet striking the caulking iron, the ring of the hammer on a hot rivet, these sounds are unchanged, a continuous thread running through the generations. The work outlives the worker. The final years are spent in quiet observation. The gaze follows the flight of the gulls, the slow rise and fall of the tide, the distant shape of a finished ship sailing out of the fjord. The world becomes a series of simple, sensory impressions. The warmth of the sun on the face, the smell of the salt air, the sound of the wind in the long grass. The body is fading, but the world it helped to build endures. The fading is not a tragedy. It is the natural conclusion to a long and useful life. It is the body's final, graceful yielding to the passage of time. Like a well-made tool that has been worn down to its essence, the body has spent itself completely in the service of its purpose. There is no regret, only a deep, abiding peace, a quiet settling into the great silence from which all things arise and to which all things must return. The centuries have dissolved into the quiet. The noise of the fjord, the cry of the gulls, the rhythmic strike of the hammerall have faded into a silence so deep it feels like a physical weight. The maker is long gone, returned to the earth, but the work remains. The great wooden hull stands in a vast, darkened hall, protected from the sun and the rain, resting in a permanent, climate-controlled twilight. The air here is cool and perfectly still. It does not carry the scent of salt or pine tar anymore, but rather the faint, dry smell of ancient, preserved organic matter. It is a scent of time itself. You feel the absolute stability of this place. There is no vibration from the ground, no wind to shake the timbers. The environment is designed solely for preservation, a glass and stone womb for the sleeping vessel. The ship rises from the floor, a towering shadow against the dim background. The oak planks, once pale and fresh, have darkened to the color of deep, rich peat. They have absorbed the shadows of 1,000 years. The wood is no longer living timber that breathes and moves. It has become something closer to stone, a hard, enduring substance that holds its shape against the slow erosion of the centuries. Step closer and the surface details emerge from the gloom. The marks of the adze are still visible on the strakes. Each shallow, scalloped depression is a frozen echo of a single swing of the arm. These are not imperfections, they are the fingerprints of the process. You notice the rhythm of the labor preserved in the grain, a silent record of the day the wood was shaped. The iron rivets are still there, holding the planks in their eternal embrace. They are crusted with the orange-brown patina of great age, the metal surface textured like the bark of a tree. Yet they have not failed. The bond they created in the heat of the forge holds true. The tension that was hammered into them remains, a silent, locked force that binds the vessel together even now. The seam where the wool was driven is now a solid, dark line. The soft fibers and the sticky tar have mineralized, becoming one with the wood. The joint is no longer a point of potential weakness, but a fused scar of immense strength. The intent of the seal to keep the water out has survived long after the water itself has receded. The integrity of the construction is absolute. Light falls upon the curve of the prow in a soft, focused beam. It catches the edges of the carved patterns, the intricate, interlacing lines that were cut with such care. The shadows play in the grooves, creating a sense of depth and movement. Even in this stillness, the lines seem to flow like water, a permanent reminder of the fluid element the ship was born to navigate. There is no sound of strain here. The wood does not groan or creak. The struggle between the material and the elements has ended. The ship has entered a state of profound rest. It is no longer a tool for travel, nor a weapon of war. It is an object of pure existence. It simply is. You feel the deep peace that radiates from its dark, quiet form. The dust motes dance in the shafts of light, moving in slow, lazy spirals. They settle gently on the dark wood, a soft, gray mantle that accumulates over decades. There are no hands to brush them away, no rough scrubbing with sand and water. The object is sacred now, separated from the world of touch. It exists only to be witnessed, to be respected for its endurance. Deep inside the structure, the keel still rests on its supports. The spine of the ship, the first timber to be laid, still carries the weight of the whole. It is hidden in the deepest shadows, unseen by most, but it performs its function just as it did on the rocky beach. The foundational strength, chosen from the heart of the forest, has not wavered. The energy of the labor is not lost, it is stored. Every ounce of force applied to bend the planks, every calorie burned to heat the iron, every moment of focus used to align the seams, it is all trapped within the physical form of the ship. The object is a battery of human intent, charged with the silence of 1,000 days of work and holding that charge forever. The coldness of the room preserves the stillness. It is a dry, sterile cold, different from the damp chill of the fjord. It wraps around the hull like a protective blanket, slowing the chemical processes of decay to a near halt. Time here is measured not in hours or seasons, but in millennia. The ship is drifting slowly through this vast, silent ocean of time. You notice the way the ship commands the space. It does not need to move to have power. Its presence alone is enough. It is a testament to the idea that a thing made well, made with respect and harmony, can outlast the hand that made it. The name of the builder is lost to the silence, but the truth of the hands is written in every line of the hull. The silence of the museum is heavy and respectful. It is a library of forms, and this ship is its greatest text. The visitors who come and go are like ghosts, passing fleetingly before the enduring reality of the wood. They look, they wonder, and they leave. The ship remains. It waits in the dark, comfortable in its stillness, holding its shape against the void. The night falls outside, and the lights in the hall dim further. The ship becomes a silhouette, a darker shape within the darkness. It is at peace. The gauntlet is long over. The sea is a distant memory. The work is finished, and the object rests. It is a perfect, silent echo of the past, resonating softly in the quiet air of the present. The noise of the era fades. The sound of the hammer on iron, the whisper of the adze on oak, the low murmur of the fjord, all of it dissolves. The struggle with the timber, the weight of the tools, and the deep endurance of the body recede into the quiet stream of time. The sharp scent of pine tar and the chill of the sea air become a distant, silent memory, held only by the dark wood. The name of the boat builder is lost, a whisper absorbed by the wind. But the foundation remains. The hull still holds its perfect form, a dark and silent curve in the long twilight. The iron rivets still hold their tension, a promise made in fire and kept in the deep quiet. The silence returns, heavier and more peaceful than before, filled with the profound presence of the finished work. The images of the past now slowly recede. The glow of the forge, the shadow of the great ship, and the vast gray sky all begin to fold back into the quiet darkness of the room. There is no more journey to be taken tonight. The work is finished, the tools are at rest. The stony beach gives way to a familiar softness, the cold air to a gentle warmth. There is only the stillness of the present moment. There is only the steady, rhythmic rise and fall of the breath. The story is finished, its echo a deep and settled calm. The night is safe, the world is quiet. And the silence is now complete, a soft, heavy blanket inviting a deep and dreamless rest.